When I'm not maintaining my viewpoint that Billie Eilish's music makes me feel like I'm in a haunted house, I like to answer questions that I get on YouTube, so let's get to it. Sean, how do you avoid playing out-of-key notes when arpeggiating the chords of a key? Are there rules like you don't play arpeggios of certain chords, like the sixth or all the minors, or if you just blow through the file notes, like they don't matter? Loving the Patreon course. Any chance for me to plug my Patreon gets first mention on the QA. So that's the beautiful thing about arpeggios is they always force you to know all the notes in the chords. Now, still, blowing through the file notes is definitely something that is super important and something that I have really kind of taken hold of in my personal playing. And I'm going to show you why. So basically, we're going to talk about kind of like what this question is getting at and how you can kind of put everything together, all right? So this may be a review for some people, but it's always good to get a refresher, right? 7 main chords in a key. We'll do the people's key, the key of G. We have G major, A minor, B minor, C major, D major, E minor, F sharp, diminished, half diminished, back to G, okay? So it's one thing to just learn the hand shapes, which again is great. That's kind of what you do when you start out, just being a beginner. You learn the hand shapes for everything. But knowing those notes and playing them as arpeggios, where you just take those notes and play them throughout the fretboard one note at a time, I think is the best way to learn anything, right? That's what I spend a lot of the time kind of focusing on in these videos. So here's like an exercise that'll always make sure you hit the right notes, okay? While also throwing one wrong note in there for funsies, okay? So, let's start with G major. Any major chord, you can make essentially the same arpeggio, right? And it looks just like this. If this is a G major chord, I'm not even gonna bore you with how to play a G major chord. If you want to, you can join my Patreon and find out. Total beginner lesson course right there. Your root note is the 3rd fret in the low E string. There's your G, and that shape is built off of that chord, okay? Just like an arpeggio is built off of that note, right? It's still a chord. We're just not playing all the notes at the same time, okay? So your major arpeggio is right here. 3E, 5E, 7E, 5A, 5D. Using this fingering is a great way to line it up as a shape, okay? Now a single note or a single octave arpeggio like that, and again the difference between a single octave arpeggio and maybe like a multi-octave arpeggio that takes you throughout the whole neck, is that the single octave ones can be used on the E or the A string, right? So if I know that the G is here, or whatever major chord I want is here, I can do that move right there. If I know that the 10th fret on the A string is also a G, the arpeggio doesn't change. It's always going to give me the right notes in that chord, that major chord, regardless of what they are, okay? Now the interesting thing about that is you only need 3 notes to make a major chord. The root note, the major third, and the 5th. So in a G, that's a G, a B, and a D. You don't have to remember that, but again, it's super helpful to know. Now, doing it this way, you're grabbing an A note. That's not technically in a G major chord, but that note is always going to be in any major chord's spot in a scale. So even though that note isn't in the chord, it'll always be in the key. Now, kind of in the spirit of this question, that's not always true for the minor chords. The only variation we can make for a minor chord is instead of going root note, 2 frets higher, 2 frets higher, then back down, we go a root note, 2 frets higher, 1 fret higher, then back down. So if I wanted a G minor one, it'd be 3E, 5E, 6E, 5A, 5D, okay? So it's a root note, it's second, a minor third, what's called a flat third. So this is the difference between major and minor, okay? Using that information, you can populate all the notes in a key all throughout the fretboard, right? If we think of just taking any major scale, and again, the way to find out the notes in the major scale are finding a root note and then going whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. That's the intervals. Either a half step is 1 fret, a whole step is 2 fret. Start right here. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. The great thing to do it is just track it on the low E string and then apply either one of those shapes, all right? Now, the shapes are never going to change. The 1st, 4th, and 5th notes and the 2nd, 3rd, and 6th notes are major, or the 1st, 4th, and 5 are major, the 2, 3, and 6 are minor, right? It's funny kind of like trying to explain it all at once is ridiculously confusing to people, but I still keep doing it because you learn a little bit and then you learn the rest of it. That's why, again, I don't mean to bore you with plugging the Patreon course, but every concept gets extra time in that course, right? All that means is we're going to do that first shape on the first note. On the second note, we're going to do the second shape where it's just the same shape, but with a flattened third. Okay, so here's G major, A minor. Now here's the tricky part. B minor. You may have heard that note right there sounds a little spicy because in the key that we're in, that's not technically in it. So as far as blowing through the foul notes, if you just think of major and minor arpeggios as such and you move them around, I think that's actually a really great way to do it, but there's one special circumstance where it will get you into trouble with a foul note, and that is on the 3 chord as a minor arpeggio. Technically, it should look like this. Right there, a minor second. So instead of it's... So again, there's something special about the 3 chord where you can't have that second interval. It's got a flat one. But to the point of, if you're just going through it like that, no one's ever really going to notice. And, you know, people, some really, really terrible people out there might be like, oh, did you forget about the Phrygian mode on the 3rd degree of the scale? And for people like that, you know, you just realize that their lives are super sad and you don't want to make it any worse. Just be the bigger person and kind of move on, right? So, again, if you want to get technical about it, the 3rd chord of any key gets a half step there, and then you can continue on. So, I'm going to do all of them on this one string. Major on G, minor on A, minor on B, major, C, D, major, E, minor. F sharp is the diminished one, which is kind of interesting, right? Which we can talk about that, but nobody ever really uses that anyways, for the most part, especially in a beginner setting. And then you end up on G, right? So learning the arpeggios that way, all throughout the neck, I think is a great way to never hit any wrong notes. And then you can do the same thing in 1 octave, just on the A string, right? So if you don't want to go all the way from here to here, if you want to stick right here, you can go G, A, B, right there, C, C, D, E, so on and so forth, right? A great way to practice this is kind of hitting the open chord, A minor, B minor, C major, D major, E minor, F sharp diminished, do whatever you want, and then back to G. Okay, so again, that's how you're always going to hit the right notes. The arpeggio always matches up with the chord, and then just doing it as just a simple major or minor triad is what it's called, a 3-note chord arpeggio, even though technically we're kind of using a leading tone as a 4-note chord. Whatever. Doing it that way, I think, is a great way to kind of like learn the entire fretboard and always have something to do and never really get lost, because you just have to find a root note and then let everything else kind of fall into place where it may. The guitar is a real beauty. Melanie Faye plays the hell out of that guitar, and it's an amazing price. So the other day I did a video kind of really shouting out this Angelico Mini DC. Yeah, this guitar is awesome. Also, Melanie Faye is awesome. If you haven't checked out her channel, she's like just an incredible, phenomenal musician, excellent guitar player. And yeah, the thing that I like most about this Angelico is the price. It's like $799, which I think it's the best sub $1,000 guitar. Looks amazing. There are different colors. I think last time I checked on Sweetwater, there was like actually one that was even $699 if it's still around. I don't know. I'll try to link you if it's still available. But yeah, this is great. I also have the Deluxe SS, which is like the loaded version of this. And I love the Deluxe SS too. But aside from you being able to split all the humbuckers into single coil, they feel pretty similar. So yeah, I think this guitar is awesome. So again, a lot of people were kind of asking more questions about it. And yeah, if you're in the market for something, definitely check this one out because I love this thing. He's going to start building a Eurorack modular inside of a year. I can feel it. So this is a comment on the video I did with the Moog werkstatt, which is hilarious. It's basically like this little synth that is under $200 and you just kind of like assemble it. And I was really kind of getting in there as far as like what a modular synth is basically if you ever see like a piece of hardware with a bunch of knobs that are not labeled and then just wires and cables sticking out everywhere. That's what like a modular Eurorack is. And I think it's so funny. And I always go into deep dives on YouTube checking these things out, but I never actually will pull the trigger and buy one just because I feel like it's not good for my mental health. In fact, there's this whole series of videos where this like girl like brings her Euroracks into like abandoned castles in like the south of France. and just like Euro rack modulars it up. And it's high comedy. And I don't know if I hope that I end up in an abandoned castle in the south of France someday with my Euro rack, or if that would be like the absolute worst thing to happen to me. So I'm still on the fence, but I'm going to try my best to hold off for now. You look like a douche that lives flamboyantly in Beverly Hills. Living flamboyantly in Beverly Hills. I mean, isn't that like the goal? I'd love to be a douche living flamboyantly in Beverly Hills. That's endgame. So thank you. At least I'm looking the part. So for listening homework this week, I'm going to throw you to the new Intervals album. Intervals is really just some kind of cool instrumental guitar shred stuff. I put shred in quotation marks because I kind of burned myself out on shred guitar instrumentals. But I think the new Intervals stuff is cool because it's tastefully done and it's just cool guitar playing. So check it out. It's always good just to have. I like listening to instrumentals just in the background of things while I do other stuff rather than like actively listening to it. And I think it really just fits the bill for that kind of thing. So check that out. If you have any questions or comments, hit me up in the comment section, Instagram, Twitter, or the website. I'll talk to y'all soon. Thanks a lot.